Hi there, welcome back to another Crypto Day video. It's Friday, which means another crypto interest rates and news update. Today is the 18th of June 2021. And before we begin, apologies if the sound quality is a bit off. It's absolutely torrential rain here, so hopefully you can't hear that in the background, but if you can, apologies for that. Now, as always, we start by taking a look at interest rates, new coins and stuff like that, and no new coins to report. Have made quite a few updates over the last few days. Updated the Swissborg rates today, but I've made also quite a few updates to Celsius. There were a few that had slipped through the net, mainly in kind of downward direction, but there were a few in the Celsius network that I had to update, so this should be more accurate now and more representative. So moving on to the token prices, you can see here over the last 7 days, Bitcoin pretty flat. As we have said for the last kind of week or so, we're trading at this kind of sideways, kind of trending, kind of like sideways, kind of like trading kind of zone. We've had some volatility within those kind of ranges, but Bitcoin's ended up 2% up over the last 7 days, so nothing dramatic there. All the other tokens have been down in comparison. So Nexo, very disappointing, down 12.8%, Celsius down 8.1%. That's had a reasonable run recently. Crypto.com down 4.7% and Swissborg down 6.6%. So a few broadly in line with a lot of other altcoins. Nexo, I think, and Celsius, a little bit disappointing for those, but nothing kind of like dramatic that has happened. Obviously, we've had a lot of news and a lot of kind of changes with Nexo. The switch from dividends over to interest payments, daily interest payments. We'll be covering that in a little bit more detail soon. But yeah, another kind of flattish week for kind of Bitcoin. We're seeing these kind of like swings up and down, but within a kind of like a range. And as I said last week, we can see this continuing maybe for another kind of couple of weeks, and hopefully with a positive kind of breakout maybe at the end of June, beginning of July. But moving on to a few stories. Firstly, Crypto.com, the exchange is now available on mobile. Now, this isn't to be confused with the Crypto.com app, which has obviously been on mobile since it originally kind of launched. This is actually the exchange. So up until recently, the exchange was only available on desktop. Now, you could obviously get to it on mobile through a web browser, but it's not a particularly pleasant or intuitive experience like that. So they have actually now created a tailored app for mobile devices. It's available on both Android and iOS, so both via the App Store and Google Play, and it has, as you can see here with the key highlights, it's a mobile-centric design, obviously, but it has pretty much all the facilities and all the kind of capabilities of the desktop version. Now, I personally find desktop versions, particularly for trading and stuff like that, where it's nice to look at kind of graphs and things like that, a lot better on desktop than on mobile. But if you are one of the users that uses mobile a lot, having a native kind of app for the exchange is very nice. So nice to see them launch that. In other news, I've been inundated with marketing emails from Swissborg over the last couple of weeks, ever since they launched their community premium, and obviously they've had a bit of a kind of a sign up, but I don't know if these are targeted emails targeted towards me, because I actually hold tokens on the kind of platform and I haven't signed up for community premium, but I've been receiving quite a few saying, oh, you should sign up for community premium, you get all these benefits and stuff like that. But one of the links was quite interesting. It was through to this CHSB, which is obviously the Swissborg token performance metrics, and if we scroll down here, there's a nice breakdown here of their circulating supply. So you can see here there's a chunk here. So this is basically all the circulating supply that's available for kind of like on the open market for trading or anything like that. And then we've got the coins that are, or the tokens that are locked up within the yield program. A tiny amount that's been burnt here, just over just under 7 million tokens, and then the stake tokens. So this is all the people that have signed up for either the Genesis premium or the community premium more recently. As you can see, getting up to almost 25% of those, but I think they would like to see more people kind of like obviously in those kind of platforms and locked up. Now there's a bit more information just about the kind of like the ecosystem in general. So if you're interested in Swissborg rather, it's quite an interesting page. It's linked in the description below, along with everything else, all the other articles. But some nice information about the kind of like circulating supply and the breakdown of the tokens. Now, I've decided personally that I'm probably not going to be going for the community premium. I do have more than enough kind of tokens in the kind of platform, but just looking at the kind of rates over the last month or so, particularly some of the new coins like kind of Bitcoin and BNB that have been kind of launched within the yield kind of platform. I just don't think the rates are competitive enough to make it worthwhile for me locking up tokens for 12 months. So if you lock up the tokens, you're not earning any yield on those kind of tokens. They're locked up for 12 months. And now in 12 months time, we could easily be in the beginning stages of the next kind of bear market. So you could easily have a situation where you're unlocking your tokens and they're worth substantially less than kind of today. I'm not saying that's definitely going to be the case, but it's a concern, I think. And one of the reasons I moved away from earning interest on Crypto.com was the fact that you had to lock up. Now, often in those cases it was a 3-month kind of like maximum, but I certainly wouldn't want to be holding and locking up a token for 12 months, particularly when the rates are, if the rates were fantastic, absolutely fantastic, maybe I'll put it down just as a cost of doing business with Swissborg, and I would kind of do it. But the rates are only, I think, with the community premium, in line, in some cases a little bit worse than some other options out there. So I won't be personally doing it, but if you're interested in the ecosystem, if you're thinking of doing it or you have done it, some interesting information here about their kind of ecosystem. And then moving on to BlockFi. So I missed this last week. It actually came out on the 10th of June, just over a week ago. But BlockFi are introducing something called BlockFi Prime. So it's a next generation Prime services platform for institutional clients. And I've talked quite a lot over the last few months about BlockFi and how they seem to be pushing more and more into the institutional kind of side. Obviously on the retail side for users like you and I, we've seen a decline in rates. We've seen a decline in the tiers, in the amount of kind of Bitcoin tiers and the amount of Ethereum tiers, which has been a little bit kind of disappointing. There have been a few kind of mess ups on their side as well, giving people, sending people Bitcoin instead of USDC for bonuses and other bits and pieces like that. So I almost kind of sense that for the last sort of 6 months they've been having a real push into the institutional kind of like client side of things. But it's quite an interesting article here. There's various kind of like additional kind of functionality that you kind of get. So they're setting up this far more featured than the retail kind of users app. So you've got real-time streaming quotes. There's lots of settlement limits and stuff like that. There's an API that people can use for trading and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that would appeal, I think, potentially to institutional kind of users. And I think maybe going forward over the next 6 months, a year or so, we can see maybe BlockFi, more of their money coming from the institutional side, more of their kind of like marketing and stuff like that, actually kind of targeting that kind of institutional side rather than the retail users like you and I. But interested if you're within that kind of market or just want to read a little bit more about it. Quite an interesting piece here. And then a couple of stories from Celsius. Firstly, if you have a Matic backed loan on Celsius and you were margin called earlier this week, don't panic. There was an issue. I believe this is also true of Synthetics, I believe, was as well. But basically, their price feeds, they pulled in incorrect data from their kind of price feeds, an incorrect price for Matic, I think Synthetics as well, which meant that a number of people were margin called. Now, I don't think anybody was liquidated. Apparently nobody was liquidated, but if you were margin called, you can reach out their support. I presume if you've actually deposited more liquidity because of this, you can probably get that kind of back out. But there was an error, and I believe there was an error on Nexo this week. I couldn't find much information about that, but I believe there was a similar error on Nexo as well. So if you were margin called with a Matic kind of back loan, reach out to Celsius. They should be able to sort you out. And then also on Celsius, while we're at it, I think I may have mentioned this a few weeks ago, came out at the end of kind of May, but it's a nice Celsius Security 101 piece. So it's targeted obviously to Celsius's own platform, but some useful kind of like information, just in general, things to kind of like to think about when you're utilizing these kind of platforms online, whether that be on desktop or on your mobile phone. But yeah, interesting to keep an eye out on things like this. I think security, a lot of people have maybe been a little bit critical that I've talked about security a lot in the past, but I think it's really important. I think the more we can kind of like make security and make these kind of like make sure that we think about the kind of security and stuff like that with the apps. We hear every week about people getting phishing attacks or SIM swaps. We hear about the latest one that I heard about was people that had their email addresses and addresses leaked in the Ledger hack were actually receiving fake devices. So they're actually being sent compromised fake Ledger devices. So there's lots of these kind of things out there. So I think, keep yourself up to date with security. A nice kind of 101 specific for Celsius, but also just other platforms as well. A lot of them are universal, kind of like things to keep an eye on. And then finally with Nexo, we talked about this a lot over the last few weeks. Obviously, the final vote was passed a couple of weeks ago, and daily interest on the Nexo tokens are now being received, but their final dividend was distributed. That was distributed on the 16th of June. It was worth 20 million. So if you have a Nexo account and you have Nexo tokens, you will have received this in your account. If you log into the web app, you'll be able to see this. I noticed it a couple of days ago. And now looking at the amount that I actually received for this final dividend compared to the daily interest rate. So a quick calculation, I worked out that with the daily interest, I'd be earning a similar amount as this final dividend in around 55 days, something like that. So less than 2 months I'd be receiving more tokens through the daily interest than the dividend. So obviously there's a lot more to think about with the interest of the dividends than purely the amount you're kind of receiving. We have to look at the effect that daily interest will have on kind of price and stuff like that. But yeah, interesting to see that the final dividend, roughly equated to just less than 2 months worth of daily interest. Now, that's it for this week. Thanks very much for watching. As always, if you have questions or comments, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Hopefully I'll see you on the next video. Give me a thumbs up, that would be fantastic. But until then, have a great day. Bye bye.